All right. Not that anything should be read into this, but my older brother, Ed, is smaller than I am. I passed him a night when he was in college. It's about the same time he started treating me like a human being. I'm not quite sure what caused it. Any younger siblings in here? We got 2, 3? Any siblings at all?
No.
Okay. So I can't harass you for picking on your older brother. All right. We got our drawing. Questions about what's going on in the drawing over here?
So, are we to assume that they're in motion now?
Yes.
And the thing he is holding is basically a steering column or whatever you call it?
That Edra is holding on to? Yes.
Okay.
So the car is just accelerating somehow. He's not actually applying any force to the car to make it do that.
He's pushing on that, there's that rod right there. He's just pushing forward on it.
But that's like part of the car.
Yes. Yes, that rod is part of the car.
But the speed is the same. It's just that they're accelerating to a different direction.
I mean, the acceleration is in that direction. I pictured that it was also moving in that same direction. The speed's the acceleration in this case is because of a change in speed, not because of a change in direction.
When you say right, I thought you meant he was turning.
No turning in here.
Okay, I understand now.
And the reason I'm using a rod for basically accelerating as opposed to a gas pedal is, I think ultimately, this is a little bit simpler. There's only so much reality we can bring in at a time.
So he's not going right?
He is going to the right.
It's going to the right, like, in the positive direction. It's one-dimensional.
Oh.
No, I was the same place. I thought you were turning to the right.
So he's just accelerating in the same direction?
Then he's moving it.
Okay.
I've had another problem where he slams his foot on the brake so that his acceleration is opposite direction of movement. All right, so not F-town for this group, F-tong.
Start with gravity.
Pardon?
Does it start with gravity?
Or the name of the force?
Gravitational force.
Okay, I'll buy that. Or,
Wait.
yep, or,
Force due to gravity.
there we go. Those are the 3. All right, so what has weight?
The human being in the car.
All right, so which way does weight act on the small objects?
Down.
Yeah. And again, that defines what down is. So I have a weight acting here. So I have a weight that's supposed to be straight down. Weight of Gerog. And you said the people. So I got weight of Edro. And you said the car?
And then I guess the weight of the box on top of the car.
Does the chair have weight?
It is a separate object. It is indeed does have weight as well. So what's the other part of this pair before we go to the chair?
Onto the car. The car would be. No.
Rookie mistake. What causes, if the car disappeared, would the box just hover there? Yeah, it's the ground that's pulling it down, the car just happens to be in the way.
Gotcha.
So weight of box and then chair. Weight of, I'm just gonna use H for chair. All right, we got one more pair of weights,
The skateboard?
or the board over here. I guess I'm using V for box, I'm gonna use, sure we'll call it a sled. W sub S. W sub S. Now, in terms of this particular force diagram, I'm not particularly concerned with the size of the arrows because I didn't give you enough information here. Odds are, given a normal reality, this would be the longest arrow if we were caring about that. Because the longer the arrow, the greater the weight. But in terms of just doing the force diagram, and we will give a context before we're done here today. All right, so what now? Because that's it. Those are all the weights.
Is it an ideal road?
Ideal road.
Hmm.
Is there an other force?
From what?
So I guess not.
No, it's self-contained. Oh, so we can. All right, what now?
Normal.
Okay,
Friction.
let's stick with one at a time.
So there's a normal force between the board and Garrug.
Okay, which way is it acting on Garrog?
Yeah, it's pushing up on Garrug.
All right, so I got normal force on Garrog. And normal force from Garrog.
Same for the chair.
So I got, you're talking between the chair and headroom?
Correct.
All right, so I got Y sub E.
Force upon the, or normal force upon the box in the car.
Say it again?
The box in the car,
Okay, acting which way on the box?
upwards.
Y sub E. Y sub E.
And then the car on the ground.
All right. All right, so I got two sets of wheels here.
Hmm.
You'll only need to do one upward force. Again, it's similar to, I got two sets of wheels here, but odds are, if it's a real car, I got four wheels, so am I gonna draw four arrows? Maybe it's a dually and I've got six wheels, so I draw six arrows, let's just simplify it, there's just one force acting up. Y sub C and Y sub C. Making sure it does not look like my G.
Up on the board.
From what's causing that?
Pushing it up and then the board down to the ground.
Okay, so between board and ground,
Yeah.
all right. So Y sub S, Y sub S. We've got two more pairs.
Is it from the chair down onto the car?
Yep.
And then the car up on the chair?
Yes. All right, so I got this force acting down here, Y sub H, and a force acting here, Y sub H. All right, we got one more. This is the one that's usually missed on these type problems.
we already have forward to the ground?
That's
Oh.
that YS right there.
The normal,
Can you give us a hint?
Think about all the places where there's actual contact. Now, the rope, the contact with the rope, we're gonna call tension, so it's not worried about the rope, but anything else that touching.
edge row to the stick.
Yes. So Edro is pushing on the stick in, I guess, that direction. So he's pushing on the stick straight that way. Which way is normal force supposed to act?
Perpendicular to the surface of contact.
So which way is the normal force going to act on the stick?
That one.
All right. The arrows I see pointing, none of them seem perpendicular to the surfaces of contact.
So you say he's pushing that way,
He's pushing that way.
so it'll be that way. That's acting back, right?
All right, so just talk about the force on the stick itself. If I push that way, which way is the normal force acting on the stick?
Should also be that, right? 'Cause it's
Except
keeping your hand
what happened to
on.
the perpendicular?
That feels wrong, even though I know what you're saying.
Because there's two forces involved. That's the trick there. There is a force acting this way. We'll call this Y sub A for accelerator. It does feel wrong, but I believe if you think about it long enough, and actually if you took a stick and you pushed in that direction, you would feel the other force. All right, so I think that's it for the normal force, unless I missed one. All right, so. Let's hold off on friction until the very end. And I know Osama wanted to do friction, but it is the toughest of all of them in this particular case.
Tension.
Which way is tension acting on what?
The rope to the guy on the board.
Garog.
Garrow.
Ordinary name, come on. Tack an E on the end, and that's the most common misspelling of my name. All right, so which way is it acting on here? So tension's pushing on the rope this way?
That way.
Garog is, the rope is pulling Garog that direction.
Okay, so therefore Garog is pulling the rope which way?
Towards him.
And it's parallel to the tight rope, so it's gonna be that way. And then on Garog, which way do I draw the arrow here?
Pointing in the opposite direction.
Some students, and it's usually a 110 issue more than a 251 issue, but some students will know it's supposed to point towards the rope, and so they'll draw it down like this way towards where I happen to draw my single bit of rope, but it is opposite the direction, so those should be opposite each other. And then the other set, ropes have tension at each end,
The car.
okay? Acting which way on the car?
From,
Along the road.
yeah,
Well,
like,
that,
like downwards, yeah.
down the downwards one, all right. So then we have FT and FT. Did not quite give myself enough room to differentiate. It is helpful if at the end you just do a quick glance, just as go, all right, all of this is readable. And let's save that one. switch it color just slightly. And if you look at just right, you get this 3D image. All right, we have one rope. We took care of both ends. Tension, done. And now friction. Let's assume that Garog is accelerating at the same rate as the car, and the board is also. That Garog is not falling off. He's just standing on the board. Now, typically in a test problem, there's a paragraph where I describe a lot of this detail. So,
There's friction on the board.
acting which way from what? What's causing that friction on the board?
The speed of the vehicle going to the right.
Need an object.
The ground,
All right, so the ground is exerting a friction on the board going which way?
that way.
All right, so I've got a friction acting this way. This is friction on the sled from the ground, and which way is the friction acting on the ground?
Anti-parallel.
Yeah.
Is there any friction from the dude to the board?
There is between the dude and the board. Which way is friction acting on the board from the dude?
That way. Because he's holding on to the ropes, he's like going this way. But the board's still going that way.
So the friction on the board is, you're both doing friction on the board that way?
Yeah. Because the rope's pulling the other way.
And he just wants to stand still. So he's pulling the board.
He is pulling, or he's causing the board to move.
Basically,
There's friction to pull or push. Friction is-
never mind.
wouldn't it not be the same, like from the board to the ground?
Because he's holding,
Because like,
he's
If-
holding the rope.
All right, Patrick, did you want to weigh in?
No.
Chance, did you want to weigh in?
Good.
There's two ways of looking at it. Number one, if the board were frictionless, or if his feet were frictionless, which way would his feet go relative to the board?
Right.
So therefore, the friction on his feet would be,
Left.
and since they come in pairs. The other way of looking at it is the board is accelerating to the right. If the board is accelerating to the right, there's got to be some force in that direction. There were no forces acting to the right until we threw this into it. The board has no reason to be moving to the right except for that friction. No Jedi powers. Now we had, two of you didn't want to weigh in, and two of you originally said that way. The dramatic pause for questions.
For some reason, I thought the rope was connected to the board, not him.
Oh, no, in this case,
No, yeah, it's the,
there's another one where I've got the rope attached to a sled, oil and sled.
There's friction between the rope and, what's his name again?
Garog,
Garog's hand.
if you just want to go George or something like that, that'd be easier for you. We actually don't know how the rope is attached to his hand. I don't know if he's holding onto it like this or it's got it wrapped around his wrist. I didn't give you that detail.
Okay,
When I don't give you that detail, that's what we're throwing in as tension.
gotcha.
If I gave you that detail, then we would replace tension with some other thing, whether it's normal force or friction or whatever it happens to be.
so that chair, it's separated from,
Right, it's just sitting there. This is not a particularly safe thing that they're doing.
so the chair will be like, there's friction on it from the bottom of
acting which way?
That way. If he's going this way,
Well, if it was frictionless, the chair would slide backwards, wouldn't it?
yeah.
So the friction's keeping it right, pushing it right.
The chair is dragging that chair, the car is dragging the chair to the right. And the other part of that force?
On the car to the left.
We do have colored pencils here, or I know we've got some in the other room. Looks like this is all the colors from gray to gray. We have colored pencils in the other room, so if it gets to this point and you want to use colored pencils on a test or something like that, just ask. I will fetch them. All right. Now, in terms of trying to figure out where would I even look for friction, again, contacts required, normal forces required. So anywhere where there's a normal force pair, there might be friction. But as demonstrated or shown last Wednesday, it doesn't have to be friction where there's normal force. Normal force is a requirement, though, for friction to exist there. All right, so we've taken care of that.
Car and the ground.
Car and ground, all right. Which way is the friction acting on the car?
Should be backwards, it's trying to resist.
So the car's moving to the right, therefore friction is acting to the left. What force would be driving the car to the right then?
Whatever is making it accelerate.
It's friction on the ground.
You ever driven on ice?
Yeah.
You find yourself really speeding up on ice? The exhaust is so powerful that it propels you forward. The only force we have with any component to the right at this point is this normal force right